Lila Featherway wasn't supposed to be there. And she was late to the party. Very late. She stood at the front door after ringing the doorbell for what felt like an eternity. Crap. This is silly. Why did I come? Maybe I'm overdressed. Wait, why did she care? Why was she worried? These were her friends, after all. Kate and Sean, who had just moved back to town. The least she could do was show up, dressed up. But she still felt nervous, for a reason she couldn't put her finger on. Lila's friends were the most fun people she knew, so they lovingly dubbed the welcome back party a black tie happy hour because, quote, who doesn't love dressing up? Me, Lila thought. I hate dressing up. But she was trying this new thing, where she was dressing for the job she had now. A new one. A big one. She looked down to almost unrecognizable feet, as they were in heels. Kitten heels, but heels all the same. Black, starkly kitten, which, to her surprise, were extraordinarily comfortable. So much so that she momentarily toyed with switching to the dark side, with becoming one of those people who wear heels with every outfit. But the style was new, and she quickly remembered that she was scared to wear it. Her hands were sweating, and her hands never sweat. The dress. She moved her eyes from her shoes to her knees. The 2 layers of fabric tickled the tops of them. The bottom layer was a comfy, silky spandex, but the top layer was black lace. Black lace like the dress's life depended on it. Sexy, smart, sophisticated, unshakable. That's why she bought it. The spaghetti straps hugged her arm muscles just so. It didn't pinch, only enhanced, thankfully, and the straight line of fabric across her chest kept her safe. Lila dusted her fingers on the fabric, pressing her palm to soak up any sweat that may have still been there. Her hand reached her waist where the bottom layer dissolved in some spots, leaving a cutout in the sides of the dress on either side of Lila's body. The lace layer laying stoically so, before inviting the bottom layer back into the middle of her body. To Lila, it was sexy enough without attracting too much attention. Ironically, anyone who saw her would have had to scrape their jaw off the floor. Her shiny, long, wavy, jet black hair ricocheted down her back. She had the smallest hint of a smoky eye and a twinkle in the corner that could stun. She had simple stud earrings on because, whether she admitted it or not, she didn't need anything else. She was about to look up and straighten her shoulders in case Kate opened the door to welcome her, but someone beat her to it. A face she didn't recognize. He charged forward so quickly to exit that she almost couldn't get a glimpse of what he looked like. Then he gazed up at her. "Oh, sorry, I just forgot my beer in my car." He was moving a mile a minute. "I'm a friend of Kate's from the new job." Before she could respond, he ran to his car, across the street in the public lot. "Hey," she then said pointlessly, followed by a sigh. He was late to the party, too. Thank goodness. He left the door open, so she walked in. The air was surprisingly cool. It was a decently cool summer night. The noise was coming from the northwest side of the house, so she headed there. This was peak party, and it was busy. From across the first room, she suddenly felt eyes on her. Eyes that she didn't recognize. New friends of Kate's? Maybe. She gave a half smile and wondered if she was overdressed. But as she took in the people sprinkled through her path so far, she knew she was indeed right on track with her wardrobe. Phew. As she moved through the uncertain waters of hallways in a home she'd never been in, she continued to follow the noise. A new face. "Hi, I'm Lila, friend of Kate's." A blonde woman shook her hand. "Hey, I'm Tara. I'm the new neighbor. I think they're getting the next keg set up in the backyard and then she'll be in." The next keg? She was thinking these people would be drinking dry martinis. Cool. Lila felt off and tired. Not ready to be there, and she didn't know why. Then, finally, and to her relief, she saw two people she knew, Rob and Sam, across the biggest room she'd encountered so far. This house was huge, and she was ready to dart toward familiarity. Suddenly, Lila paused. She realized that Rob and Sam were looking at her in the most confusing way she had ever seen them look at anyone, let alone her. What's going on? Were they mad she was late? Sad? Surprised to see her? Was her underwear line showing in these stupid dress cutouts? These thoughts ran through her head at the same time that she watched Sam's eyes leave hers and move to the east wall. Lila followed where her stare went and felt every part of her own body go still. It was him. In a black suit, white collared shirt, just like she remembered him. The soft, blonde, wavy hair, the blue eyes, the relentlessly light aura he never knew he had. It was Carter. The man she fell uninhibitedly, recklessly in love with 4 years prior, and who up until now hadn't seen since she left him a year ago. But how? Why? How the hell did he get here? When did he get here? Where is Kate? Lila's face looked to Sam like a broken swan awkwardly combined with a rigidly poised royal. Lila began twisting every internal mental fiber to look normal and composed. Carter. He was heartbroken, but in awe. He felt immediate guilt, even though he didn't know why. He hadn't planned for this to go this way. He found himself perplexed by Lila's energy, one he didn't recognize. She looked like a gazelle that was ready for battle. An elegance. A grace that he suspected she had never acknowledged because she didn't have time. Seeing her face made his chest tighten and his shoulders relax, all at the same time. They were both hurting. But how could he think this could have gone any differently? He figured perhaps there was a small chance she would be at this party, but admittedly was afraid to ask Kate or Sean. So he convinced himself that she had left the circle of people. It would help him feel present enough to housewarm tonight. And he was almost safe. He was almost right. It was late now. Where was she coming from? Was she by herself? Does she still live here? Carter, he said to himself. Just say hello. This was on him if he wanted to break the ice, and he knew it. He tried to avoid a guilty half-smile, and his shoulders fell forward. Lila felt every emotion as he walked toward her, but her face did not show it when she had turned away from Sam. Hi, Carter said. Hi, Lila barely said. I didn't know you were going to be... Hi! Kate waltzed into the biggest room, her voice breaking the unwanted ice. Drink in hand, she threw her arms around Lila without looking at any parameters. I am so happy to see you, she said through seesaw hugs. Carter remained still. Now, Lila needed to retreat. Every emotional opportunity was staring at her, and she didn't know which one to pick. I can't stay, actually. I just wanted to stop by and see you to wish congrats. I got you a wine subscription as a housewarming gift, so I'll send you all of the details. Okay, Lila thought. I've got this. Just hug and walk, and you can breathe again once you're in the car. Thank you so much. You're the sweetest. This came from Kate, who definitely had been celebrating with some sort of drink, keg beer or otherwise. This was about the time that Lila realized almost everyone was feeling no pain. Carter weirdly looked sober in the moment she looked at him. She felt him slowly retreat as she continued to speak with Kate. Kate! someone shouted from the back porch. "Brad broke your fishing line!" It was Sean, her husband. "Come on, Brad," Kate yelled as she headed toward the backyard. The moment she moved, so did Lila, but in the other direction. Sam didn't dare follow her out, even as her friend. Kate was too late to block Brad's boisterous spirit from intruding into the living room. Brad. Sigh. The friend who is a good time until it's no longer a good time. 6'7", his grand smile and relentless humor sometimes stops people and forces them to stare. A hurricane, in some ways, when the party got late enough. Broken fishing line in hand, Brad was laughing, but was also ready to apologize to the host, thankfully. But before he could get the words out, he saw a face he couldn't believe was in the same room as Carter's. It was Lila, and she was moving away from him. "Lila Featherway? Holy shit, what are you doing here?" Everyone was staring at her, waist cutouts and all. She decided not to say anything given how distracted she was internally begging the universe's hand to pluck her out of this situation. Brad tripped over the fishing line, but caught himself. He may have made a large contribution to cleaning out the first keg. "Lila, get out of here! Oh my fucking God! Never thought I'd see you two in the same room again." She felt her body getting more and more tense. "I'll see you guys later." She took 2 steps back and turned her shoulder to leave with the impeccable force of understanding that she didn't belong there anymore. And then Brad's voice pierced her ear like a firework. "Hey! Hey, where are you going?" The hallways were so fucking long and big, so everyone was still staring at her. "Lila, what the fuck? You can say hi?" She was on fire now, but still moving. Brad looked at Carter. "Oh, I get it," Brad said, now louder and more determined. "Oh, I get it!" Brad shouted as he looked to Lila. Then, at the top of his drunken lungs, "Have to leave him high and fucking dry again like you did last year." The room fell completely silent, beside the music in the background. Lila stopped walking. She stopped breathing. The entire room looked to Brad, then back to Lila. She slowly pinched her brows together to mask the sting. "What?" Lila thought. "No. Damn it, Brad." Brad was 1,000% in defense of Carter, even though there were no teams. He hated Lila for leaving him, and hated even more how much it hurt Carter. But the parties silently agreed that this boisterous energy that people typically loved had reached the boundary, and Lila didn't deserve it. Lila's face felt hot now, but her body was freezing. The hallway to the front door seemed like miles away, but she somehow started moving. "Get out. Just get out." Sam shouted, "Lila!" out of concern, but she couldn't speak back. She couldn't even look at anyone. She reached the front door and brought herself down the steps. Lila crossed the main street to the convenient parking lot where she had parked her blue 2017 Honda. The wet gravel caught her kitten heels as if she didn't deserve to wear them, punishing her with every step. She began rumbling through her far too small black clutch. As she found her keys and continued walking toward her car, she heard a door close across the street. No, she thought. She picked up the pace to the point that she was speed walking. It was a big parking lot. She was boiling, but was not about to overflow. Lila, please." It was Carter, and he was running. He was the very last person she wanted to see. Lila, don't leave. Brad's hammered. He's just saying stupid stuff. You know how he gets, he said while picking up his pace. She kept walking, and he surprisingly found himself agitated. Here she was, walking away again. Lila! Then something in Carter's makeup told him he had to try one more time to reach her. Solve something. For her to take his recommendation, to finally get what he was saying. A final try. My God, Lila, just ignore it! She kept walking. He was losing her. Lila! He almost shouted. Just ignore it! And then, with all of his might, Lila! To stop her in her tracks. For once, will you simply not let shit impact you? A chill went up Lila's spine. Her knees bent, and a flame erupted in the back of her head, uncontrollably so. She saw her vision become horizontal, and the crickets chirping in the lake nearby went silent in her head. She couldn't keep her words from leaving her lips. Oh! She snapped her shoulders around to face him. That's exactly what you want from me, isn't it? That's exactly what you always wanted me to do. She could barely see. There was never a question of how anything was impacting me, was there? Ever. I just needed everything to roll off my back while I tended to your wants and needs and desires and your fucking fantasies, right? I just needed to let things go and embrace new beginnings and challenge myself, all while I broke my neck holding on to your dreams. The night air stayed idle like it had been struck by lightning. Carter couldn't move now, except from his chest rising from running. He was stunned. Lila had sucked the night air of any remaining energy in this moment because if she didn't, she felt she wouldn't have been able to breathe. This was never, ever about me, broke through Lila's mouth along with a tear that was so dense she felt the weight of it so severely on her cheek as it dropped. Then, in an almost whimper, it was always about you and what you needed. She breathed heavily, and then, the saddest part of it all is that I believed that too. She bowed her head and started walking, broken with what she had just said, but understanding at the same time that she must have said it for a reason. How she could have held both emotions together in the same moment, she'd never know. Even though she couldn't see it, Carter dropped his head at the same time as she did. There was nothing he could say right now, and he was guilty, confused, angry, and tired. He stood in the middle of the lot as a raindrop hit his temple and watched her drive away. Lila cried the entire way home, trying to comprehend and trying to forget what had just happened. An unexpected turn of events, to say the very least. She found herself to be extremely uncomfortable in the dress that was supposed to carry her through the night. At this point, all she wanted to do was rip it off her body. When she arrived home, she took a deep breath before she got out of her car. The car was a safe place to experience how she was feeling, and she was done. She walked into her home and flicked the light on, and suddenly felt the weight of her eyes. She immediately felt the distinct desire to undress, removing the evening from her proximity. She turned on her closet light and grabbed a white cotton tank top, thick, white PJ shorts, and a white Henley sweatshirt that was the softest fabric she had ever encountered. It's why she wore it so much. She felt the fleece against her cheekbones as she put it on. It soaked up the remnants of the water on her cheeks. She was cold now. Then, She slathered her eye makeup remover into her hand, desperate to remove the leftover humiliation. Then face wash. Then face wash again, to sterilize any more unwanted remnants as she surprisingly shed one more reserve bank tear. She was clean of the night and ready to rest. She pulled her hair up into a top bun and removed the remaining sad strands of hair from her face, locking them into the seclusion of the silky bun. Nothing could touch her now. Unfortunately, she looked in the mirror, and her face said otherwise. Lila didn't recognize this sadness. It was a melancholy, sort of peaceful admittance that she didn't make something work, and that did not feel good. The only thing she could do was go to sleep and pray that she felt better tomorrow. As she more closely noted the crevices holding up her eyes, the doorbell rang. It was definitely Sam. She saw how badly she felt about Brad, and she was coming over to comfort her, maybe even have a glass of wine to talk it out. But Lila was so tired. She looked at herself in the mirror. She became frozen with uncertainty. What do I have the energy for right now? She thought. She started walking to the door and, out of pure delirium and care, prepared to engage even if for a few minutes. It was a friend checking in, after all. She felt like she was floating toward the destination. Maybe because she had convinced herself just before that her body didn't have the energy to move. She looked through the peephole with fatigue. To her complete shock, it was Carter. He looked like a wet pit bull in a rainstorm that she in no way particularly wanted to help, but noted the concern on his face. What the fuck was he gonna say? She immediately felt anger, and then paused. Delirium or not, what did she have to lose? She opened the door, looking him dead in the eye with sheer curiosity. It should be noted that Carter hadn't planned what he was going to say if Lila opened the door. Shit. Once he saw her, a new version from less than an hour ago, he recognized the person he fell in love with. And that stole his words. Shit. She held his gaze. He couldn't tell if she was waiting for him to say something. This was a moment that Lila didn't ask for. But she still knew the man across from her well. She zeroed in her gaze on his larger-than-life, light blue eyes. She was waiting to see how he could possibly come up with something to say to make her feel better. As she waited, his eyes got clearer, familiar. She remembered how he used to look at her with them. The ever-present warmth. The pride in his eyes when she got promoted to managing director. The laughter dancing in his eyes when she broke the backyard swing after too many beers. The tears in his eyes when she told him she got the VP job and had to go. She finally remembered that she hurt him, too. There was silence for what felt like an eternity, as they both questioned if hope was the right choice here. Lila then decided. You want a beer? Lila concluded. Carter melted into a weird comfort and sadness all at the same time. He walked through the door without saying anything, past her. Lila shut the door. She had no game plan, but that was okay. There was silence for 10 seconds or so. All I have is Sam Adams and stuff for gin and tonics, Lila said. Sam's is great, thanks, Carter said sheepishly. He was drenched and almost shivering. Do you want a sweatshirt? Teddy left his fleece last weekend, Lila noted. Teddy was her cousin, for the record, and he seemed to forget something every time Lila hosted the extended family. Sure, thanks. and Carter smiled for the first time since he saw her. This is how he remembered her. And somehow she let him in. What the hell was he doing here? Lila opened the beer and handed it to him. A beer was the last thing she wanted. She walked into the living room, setting up a spot for him to say whatever he was going to say. They sat down on the couch with a similar, shaky movement. Carter had worked through Lila's leaving, but a part of him still had so many questions. How early on did she start looking for a new job? The VP job? What did he do wrong? Some days it felt like she just left. He knew deep down it happened for a reason, but it hurt to this day. That's why he erupted. He had lost any control in a situation involving someone who he had cared so much for. He didn't want the bad things to impact her. If anything, he wanted everything surrounding her to be good. And he couldn't give her that. "I'm sorry, Lila," Carter said. She waited. "I know," was all she could think of to say. Then, "You and I both know Brad will defend you till the end of time." He sighed and tried to laugh at the same time, but it wasn't easy to do so. She didn't laugh. He took a sip of beer. Silence now stood between them again. Lila felt like she didn't have anything left to say. Was he a new version of himself? Was she? Did they even understand one another anymore? How could she possibly have known every crevice of this person's soul a few years ago, and now she could call him a stranger? Carter finally took the unavoidable leap and looked into Lila's eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." After a painfully long moment, Lila replied, "I never meant to either." Carter continued, "I didn't take the time to understand what you needed. I never questioned if the number of times you said sure were honest and—" He paused and looked down. "I never asked." "I never asked you to ask," Lila whispered as a tear fell from her eye. A wave of wonder was now coming to a head, and two sad people were pulling off their layers. "I just never thought you would leave," Carter said as his voice cracked. "Neither did I," Lila could barely blurt out. Carter stared at her. He realized in this moment she was in full pajamas. Her hair on top of her head was how he remembered her. He was cold from the rain, even with the fleece and the white collared shirt stuck to his skin. He took another sip of beer. With conclusion as the only remaining option here, Carter took another deep breath. "I'm grateful for everything that it was, Lila," he said without ego. "Me too," she replied. She then took a deep breath that was much needed. "We need to be in two different places," she said. "That's never going to change." Then, combining her desire for forgiveness and acceptance, she said, "I guess it's okay, you know? It was right when it was right." She somehow smiled. Carter took in her words and her smile, and then looked down. He thought for a moment and then, with a bit of relief, said, "Yeah, I guess so." They leaned back into the couch, thinking of what to think or say next. Was this the neutral air that they were looking for? No one gives a manual for these types of conversations, and both of them were trying to debrief the last hour in record speed. They were maybe, finally, on the same wavelength. "What do we do now?" Carter said, tiredly staring ahead. He felt the cold of his remaining beer on his now damp fingers. Lila took a deep breath as her warm sweatshirt hugged her neck. And then, with beautiful surrender, "I think we just keep going."